The starship Eclipse descended through Earth's atmosphere, its sleek, alien hull shimmering like liquid silver under the glow of the setting sun. Inside, Ambassador Kael'thar of the Zinthari Empire gazed out at the blue-green planet below, his multifaceted eyes reflecting a mixture of curiosity and disdain. To him, Earth was a backwater, a quaint, underdeveloped world inhabited by a species that had somehow stumbled into the stars without the gift of telepathy or the unity of a hive mind. Primitives, he muttered, his thoughts echoing through the neural link shared by his entourage. How do they even function without a collective mind? His aide, a young Zinthari named Venara, hesitated before replying. They are resourceful, Ambassador. Their technology, while crude, is surprisingly effective. Kael'thar scoffed. Resourcefulness is no substitute for unity. Without telepathy, they are fractured, divided. They will never rise above their limitations. The Eclipse touched down at Unity Spaceport, the largest interstellar hub on Earth. A delegation of humans awaited, their faces calm and composed despite the weight of the moment. At the forefront stood Lieutenant Commander Elena Reyes, her sharp eyes scanning the alien vessel with a mix of caution and curiosity. She was tall, with dark hair pulled into a tight bun and a posture that radiated quiet confidence. As the Zinthari delegation disembarked, Kael'thar's telepathic presence washed over the humans like a cold breeze. He expected to sense fear, uncertainty, or at least awe. Instead, he found nothing. The humans' minds were closed to him, their thoughts hidden behind an impenetrable veil. It was unnerving. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Kael'thar," Elena said, her voice steady and polite. "We are honored by your visit." Kael'thar inclined his head, his mandibles twitching in what passed for a smile among his kind. "The honor is mine, Lieutenant Commander Reyes, though I must admit, I find your species fascinating. How do you manage to coordinate without a hive mind?" Elena's lips curved into a faint smile. "We manage. Words, gestures, trust, they go a long way." Kael'thar's telepathic aura pulsed with skepticism. Trust? A fragile thing, easily broken. In the Zinthari Empire, trust is unnecessary. We are one mind, one will. "And yet," Elena replied, her tone light but pointed, "here we are, standing on equal footing." The remark hung in the air, unspoken but unmistakable. Kael'thar's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. The humans, it seemed, were not as simple as he had assumed. The delegation moved to a nearby conference center where the two species would begin formal negotiations. The Zinthari had come to Earth under the guise of diplomacy, but their true intentions were clear. They sought to assess humanity's strength or lack thereof. As the talks began, Kael'thar dominated the conversation, his telepathic presence filling the room. He spoke of the Zinthari Empire's vast fleets, their advanced technology, and their unbreakable unity. The humans listened politely, their expressions unreadable. Elena, seated at the head of the human delegation, waited for the right moment to speak. When Kael'thar finally paused, she leaned forward, her gaze steady. "Ambassador, your achievements are impressive," she said. "But unity is not the only path to strength. Diversity, adaptability, and individual initiative have their own advantages." Kael'thar's mandibles twitched again, this time in amusement. "Advantages? Your species is fractured, divided by nations, ideologies, and petty conflicts. How can you hope to compete with a civilization that is truly united?" Elena's smile didn't waver. "We'll see." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that Kael'thar couldn't quite understand. There was something in her tone, in the way she held his gaze, that hinted at a deeper truth. The humans, he realized, were not as weak as they appeared. As the talks continued, Elena's mind raced. She had studied the Zinthari extensively, and she knew their reliance on telepathy was both their greatest strength and their greatest weakness. They were a hive mind, yes, but that meant they thought as one, moved as one, and crucially fought as one. And that, Elena knew, was something humanity could exploit. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena stood on a balcony overlooking the spaceport. The stars were beginning to appear, their light faint but steady. She thought of the Zinthari, of their arrogance and their certainty. They saw humanity as weak, divided, and primitive. But they were wrong. Elena's comlink buzzed, pulling her from her thoughts. It was Admiral Marcus Hale, her commanding officer. "Raise," he said, his voice gruff but calm. "We've received reports of Zinthari ships moving near the outer colonies. It looks like they're testing our defenses." Elena's jaw tightened. "Understood, sir. What are your orders?" "Prepare the fleet," Hale replied. "If they want to fight, we'll give them one. But remember, Reyes, this isn't just about firepower. It's about outthinking them." "Yes, sir," Elena said. "We'll show them that silence can be louder than any hive mind." As the call ended, Elena gazed up at the stars once more. The Zinthari thought they had the upper hand, but they didn't understand humanity. They didn't understand the power of silence, of trust, of unspoken bonds. And that, Elena thought, would be their downfall. The galaxy's quietest revolution had begun. The colony world of New Horizon was a jewel on the edge of human space, its sprawling cities and lush farmlands a testament to humanity's resilience. But now it was under siege. Zinthari warships loomed in the sky, their sleek, angular hulls blotting out the sun. Telepathic drones swarmed the streets, their eerie silence broken only by the hum of their anti-gravity engines. The colony's defenders, a ragtag mix of militia and off-duty soldiers, fought valiantly, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. In the heart of the chaos, Sergeant Marcus Axe Alvarez crouched behind a crumbling barricade, his rifle clutched tightly in his hands. His squad was pinned down, their comms jammed by the Zinthari's telepathic interference. "We can't stay here," Axe muttered, his voice barely audible over the din of battle. "We need to move." His second-in-command, Corporal Lena Patel, nodded grimly. "They're flanking us. If we don't pull back now, we're dead." Axe glanced at the rest of the squad. 6 soldiers, their faces streaked with dirt and sweat. They were scared, but they trusted him. That trust was all they had. "Listen up," Axe said, his voice low but firm. "We're going to fall back to the old warehouse district. It's a maze down there, and the Zinthari won't be able to use their drones effectively. Stick close, stay quiet, and follow my lead." The squad nodded, their eyes locked on Axe. There were no questions, no hesitation. They had trained for this, even if they had never expected it to happen. As the Zinthari closed in, Axe raised his hand and made a series of quick, deliberate gestures. The squad moved as one, slipping through the rubble and into the narrow alleys of the warehouse district. The Zinthari followed, their telepathic link allowing them to coordinate with flawless precision. But as they entered the labyrinthine streets, something unexpected happened. The humans were gone. Meanwhile, aboard the Zinthari command ship Eclipse, Ambassador Kelthar watched the battle unfold through the eyes of his soldiers. The humans were putting up more resistance than expected, but it was only a matter of time before they were crushed. "Their coordination is impressive," Venara observed, her telepathic voice tinged with unease. "For a species without a hive mind, they move with remarkable unity." Kelthar waved a dismissive hand. "Unity? Hardly. They are animals, driven by instinct and fear. Their resistance is futile." But as the minutes passed, Kelthar began to feel a flicker of doubt. The humans were not behaving as he had anticipated. They were not panicking, not breaking under the pressure. Instead, they were adapting, improvising, and striking back with surprising efficiency. On the surface, Axe and his squad were proving Kelthar wrong. Using hand signals and prearranged tactics, they ambushed a Zinthari patrol, taking them out with ruthless precision. The Zinthari, accustomed to reading their enemies' thoughts, were caught completely off guard. "How are they doing this?" one of the Zinthari soldiers demanded, his telepathic voice laced with frustration. "We can't predict their movements." Axe didn't answer. He didn't need to. The answer was in the way his squad moved, in the unspoken trust that bound them together. They didn't need telepathy. They had something stronger. Silence. Back on the Eclipse, Kelthar's unease grew. The humans were not just resisting. They were winning. Small victories, yes, but victories nonetheless. "This is unacceptable," Kelthar snarled, his mandibles twitching in anger. "Send in the reinforcements. Crush them." Venara hesitated. "Ambassador, perhaps we should reconsider our strategy. The humans are more resourceful than we anticipated." Kelthar rounded on her, his telepathic aura crackling with fury. Do not question me, Vinara. The humans are weak, divided, and primitive. They cannot stand against us. But even as he spoke the words, Kael'thar couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something. The humans were not acting like a fractured, divided species. They were acting like a single, cohesive force. On the surface, Axe and his squad had reached their objective, a hidden bunker deep within the warehouse district. Inside, they found a group of civilians, men, women, and children, huddled together in fear. "We're getting you out of here," Axe said, his voice firm but reassuring. "Stay close and do exactly as we say." The civilians nodded, their eyes wide with fear but also hope. They trusted Axe and his squad, just as the squad trusted each other. As they moved through the streets, Axe's comlink crackled to life. It was Lieutenant Commander Elena Reyes, her voice calm but urgent. "Axe, this is Reyes. We've got a plan, but we need you to hold the line a little longer. Can you do that?" Axe grinned, despite the chaos around him. "You know it, Commander. We'll keep them busy." Elena's voice softened. "Good luck, Sergeant. And remember, silence is our weapon." The call ended, and Axe turned to his squad. "You heard the lady. Let's show these bugs what we're made of." The squad moved out, their movements precise and deliberate. They didn't need words. They didn't need telepathy. They had each other, and that was enough. As the battle raged on, Kael'thar watched from the eclipse, his frustration mounting. The humans were not just surviving, they were thriving. Their silent coordination, their unbreakable trust, their sheer determination, it was unlike anything he had ever seen. "How are they doing this?" he muttered, his telepathic voice tinged with disbelief. Vinara hesitated before replying. "Perhaps, Ambassador, we have underestimated them." Kael'thar didn't respond. He couldn't. For the first time in his life, he felt doubt. The humans were not weak. They were not divided. They were something else entirely. And that, he realized, made them dangerous. The spark of rebellion had been lit, and the galaxy would never be the same. The UNS Resolute glided through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the faint light of a distant star. Aboard the flagship of the Silent Fleet, Lieutenant Commander Elena Reyes stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that dominated the center of the room. The display showed a map of the sector with the Zinthari fleet marked in red and the Silent Fleet in blue. "They're moving into position," Elena said, her voice calm but tense. "Just as we predicted." Admiral Marcus Hale, a grizzled veteran with a reputation for unorthodox tactics, stood beside her. His sharp eyes scanned the display, his mind already calculating the odds. "Good," he said. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." The Silent Fleet was a new concept, born out of necessity. While the Zinthari relied on their telepathic link to coordinate their forces, humanity had to find another way. The solution was silence. Absolute, unbreakable silence. The fleet operated under strict radio silence, relying on prearranged signals, encrypted data bursts, and the unspoken trust between crew members. It was a risky strategy, but it was their only hope. Elena turned to the tactical officer, a young ensign named Kara Voss. "Status report." Kara's fingers flew across her console. "All ships are in position, Commander. The Resolute is ready to engage on your command." Elena nodded. "Good. Let's..." Before she could finish, the ship shuddered violently, throwing everyone on the bridge off balance. Alarms blared and the lights flickered. "Report!" Hale barked, gripping the edge of the console to steady himself. Kara's face paled as she read the data on her screen. "We've been hit. A Zinthari cruiser just decloaked off our starboard side." Elena's heart raced, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Damage? Shields are down to 40%, Kara replied. "No hull breaches, but we've lost power to the port thrusters." Hale's jaw tightened. "They're testing us. They want to see how we react." Elena's mind raced. The Zinthari had anticipated their movements, just as she had feared, but there was no time to dwell on it. "Ensign Voss, reroute power from non-essential systems to the shields," Elena ordered, "and get me a channel to the Vanguard." Kara nodded and quickly complied. A moment later, the face of Captain Jax Patch Morales appeared on the screen. The Vanguard's commander was a gruff but brilliant engineer, his face streaked with grease and his eyes sharp with determination. Reyes, he said, his voice crackling with static. We've got a problem. I know, Elena replied. The Zinthari are onto us. We need to change tactics. Patch grinned, despite the situation. I've got an idea, but you're not going to like it. Elena raised an eyebrow. Let's hear it. The plan was risky, but it was their only chance. The Resolute would feign a retreat, luring the Zinthari into a trap. Meanwhile, the Vanguard and the rest of the fleet would flank the enemy, using the asteroid field nearby to mask their movements. As the Resolute began its retreat, the Zinthari took the bait. Their ships pursued their telepathic link, allowing them to coordinate with flawless precision. But as they entered the asteroid field, something unexpected happened. The Silent Fleet struck. Using the asteroids for cover, the human ships launched a coordinated attack, their movements precise and deliberate. The Zinthari, caught off guard, struggled to respond. Their telepathic link, usually their greatest strength, became a liability as conflicting thoughts and emotions flooded their minds. On the bridge of the Resolute, Elena watched the battle unfold with a mixture of relief and satisfaction. The plan was working, but it wasn't over yet. Admiral, she said, turning to Hale, we need to press the advantage. Hale nodded. Agreed. All ships, focus fire on the Zinthari flagship. Let's take out their command. The order was relayed through encrypted data bursts, and the fleet responded with deadly precision. The Zinthari flagship, a massive cruiser bristling with weapons, was quickly overwhelmed. But just as victory seemed within reach, the Zinthari launched a counterattack. A swarm of telepathic drones emerged from the flagship, their eerie silence broken only by the hum of their anti-gravity engines. Incoming, Kara shouted, her voice tinged with panic. Elena's heart raced as the drones closed in. Evasive maneuvers, and get me a channel to the Vanguard. Patch's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. We've got a problem, Reyes. Those drones are jamming our systems. We can't get a clear shot. Elena's mind raced. They needed a way to disrupt the drones, but how? Then it hit her. Patch, can you modify the Vanguard's shields to emit an EMP pulse? She asked. Patch's eyes lit up. Yeah, but it'll fry our systems too. We'll be dead in the water. Elena hesitated, but only for a moment. Do it. Patch nodded and quickly got to work. A moment later, the Vanguard's shields flared, emitting a powerful EM pulse that disabled the drones and the Vanguard itself. The Zinthari flagship, now vulnerable, was quickly destroyed. The rest of the fleet, leaderless and disorganized, retreated. As the battle ended, Elena let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. They had won, but at a cost. Patch, she said, her voice soft. You okay? Patch's face appeared on the screen, his grin back in place. Yeah, we're fine. Just gonna need a tow. Elena smiled despite the exhaustion and tension. You've earned it. As the fleet regrouped, Admiral Hale turned to Elena, his expression unreadable. You did good, Reyes, he said. But this is just the beginning. The Zinthari won't make the same mistake twice. Elena nodded, her mind already racing with new strategies and tactics. The Silent Fleet had proven itself, but the war was far from over, and the galaxy was watching. Elena's plan was audacious, but audacity was all they had left. The Silent Fleet had been battered, its ships limping back to the shadow of a distant moon after their first disastrous engagement. The Zinthari had outmaneuvered them at every turn, their telepathic link allowing them to react faster than any human crew could hope to. But Elena had seen something in the chaos, a crack in the Zinthari's perfect armor. They were too reliant on their telepathy, too confident in their ability to read their enemy's intentions. That overconfidence could be weaponized. In the dim light of the UNS Resolute's war room, Elena stood before Admiral Hale and the fleet's senior officers. The holographic display in front of them showed the asteroid field of the Draxus Belt, a dense, chaotic expanse of spinning rocks and debris. It was the perfect place for an ambush, but only if the Zinthari could be lured in. We use their own telepathic relays against them, Elena said, pointing to the captured Zinthari device they'd salvaged from the last battle. It was a crystalline sphere, pulsing faintly with an eerie blue light. We broadcast a fake distress signal through it, Make them think we're retreating in disarray. They'll chase us into the belt, and when they do, we hit them hard. Hale's eyes narrowed. And if they see through it? If their telepaths pick up on the deception? They won't, Elena said. They're not looking for lies, they're looking for thoughts. And we're not giving them any. The room fell silent. Jax Morales, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, let out a low whistle. You're talking about turning their greatest strength into a liability. I like it. But it's risky as hell. Risk is all we've got, Elena shot back. They're coming for New Horizon next. If we don't stop them here, there won't be a colony left to defend. Hale studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Do it. But we'll need more than tricks. If this goes wrong, we're done. The fleet moved quickly. The captured telepathic relay was installed on a decoy ship, programmed to broadcast a carefully crafted signal. A mix of fragmented human thoughts and desperate, chaotic emotions. It was designed to feel real, to mimic the mental signature of a fleeing, broken force. The Zinthari would sense the fear, the panic, the disarray. They'd believe they were closing in for the kill. As the silent fleet positioned itself within the asteroid field, the crew of the Resolute worked in tense silence. There were no orders shouted, no comms chatter. Every move had been rehearsed, every signal prearranged. Hand gestures, light flashes, and subtle vibrations through the ship's hull guided their actions. The Zinthari wouldn't hear a whisper. Elena stood on the bridge, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. Beside her, Athena, the ship's AI, projected a holographic map of the approaching Zinthari fleet. They've taken the bait, Athena said, her voice calm but edged with tension. Ike, 3 minutes. 3 minutes to glory or oblivion, Jax muttered from his station. He was monitoring the decoy ship's signal, ensuring it stayed strong enough to lure the enemy in. No pressure. The Zinthari ships entered the asteroid field in perfect formation, their telepathic link allowing them to navigate the debris with uncanny precision. But the silent fleet was waiting. Hidden among the rocks, their ships powered down to minimal emissions, they were ghosts in the void. Elena's heart pounded as the enemy closed in. She glanced at Admiral Hale, who stood like a statue, his face unreadable. He gave her a single nod. Now, she whispered. The trap sprang. The decoy ship detonated, sending a shockwave of debris hurtling toward the Zinthari vanguard. At the same moment, the silent fleet powered up, their ships surging forward in a coordinated assault. There was no telepathic link to guide them, no hive mind to synchronize their movements. There didn't need to be. Every crew member knew their role, trusted their comrades to do the same. The Zinthari faltered, their telepaths scrambled to read the humans' intentions, but there was nothing to read, just silence, and the sudden, brutal reality of warships emerging from the shadows. Missiles streaked through the void, slamming into Zinthari hulls. Railguns roared, tearing through shields. The asteroid field became a maelstrom of fire and chaos. Elena gripped the edge of her console as the Resolute shuddered from a near miss. Target their command ship, she ordered. They're still trying to regroup. The Zinthari flagship loomed ahead, its crystalline hull shimmering with telepathic energy. It was the heart of their fleet, the nexus of their hive mind. If it fell, the rest would crumble. The Resolute's main cannon fired, a lance of energy that pierced the flagship's shields and carved into its core. The Zinthari fleet hesitated, their perfect coordination fracturing for the first time. Without the flagship's telepathic anchor, their ships began to drift, their movements sluggish and uncertain. Push them back, Hale barked. The silent fleet pressed the advantage, their ships weaving through the debris with practiced precision. The Zinthari, disoriented and overwhelmed, began to retreat. When the dust settled, the asteroid field was littered with the wreckage of Zinthari ships. The silent fleet had won its first major victory, but the cost was high. Dozens of human vessels were damaged or destroyed, and the survivors were exhausted, their ships running on fumes. Elena stood on the bridge, staring at the aftermath. Jax limped over to her, a grim smile on his face. Told you it was risky. She didn't return the smile. They'll come back, and next time, they'll be ready for us. Athena's voice cut through the moment. Incoming transmission from New Horizon. They've detected another Zinthari fleet, larger than the last. Elena's stomach dropped. The war was far from over. The briefing room aboard the UNS Resolute was suffocatingly quiet. The surviving officers of the Silent Fleet sat around the battered conference table, their faces etched with exhaustion and grim resolve. The victory in the Draxus Belt had bought them time, but not much. The Zinthari were coming again, and this time they weren't taking chances. Long-range scanners showed a fleet twice the size of the last, its telepathic signature a storm of coordinated intent. They'd adapted. They were angry. Elena stood at the head of the table, her hands clasped behind her back to hide the tremor in her fingers. She hadn't slept in days, but her voice was steady as she addressed the room. We've proven we can beat them, but they're learning. They'll expect another ambush, another trick. We need to hit them where they're truly vulnerable. Admiral Hale leaned forward, his eyes sharp despite the shadows under them. And where's that, Reyes? We've already disrupted their telepathic link once. They'll have countermeasures in place by now. Elena met his gaze. It's not just about disrupting the link, it's about breaking it. Their hive mind isn't just a tool, it's their foundation. They rely on it for everything: strategy, coordination, even morale. If we can overload it, flood it with noise, we can shatter their ability to function as a fleet. Jax, slouched in his chair with a bandage covering half his face, snorted. Noise? You want to scream at them until they give up? Something like that, Elena said. She tapped the console, bringing up a holographic display of a Zinthari telepathic relay station, a massive crystalline structure orbiting a gas giant in the nearby virus system. This is their central hub for the sector. Every telepathic signal in their fleet passes through it. If we can infiltrate it and upload a virus, we can turn their hive mind against them. The room erupted into murmurs. Jax leaned forward, incredulous. You're talking about a ground op on a Zinthari-controlled planet. Do you have any idea what their telepaths will do to us the second we step foot in there? They'll sense us coming before we even land. That's why we won't be thinking about it, Elena said. We'll use their expectations against them. They're so used to reading thoughts, they don't bother with traditional security. We go in silent. No plans, no comms, no preconceived tactics. Just a team, a goal, and trust. Hale's expression didn't change, but his voice carried a note of skepticism. You're asking a lot of your people, Reyes. Trust is one thing. Blind faith is another. It's not blind, she said. It's earned. We've all seen what happens when we fight as one. We don't need telepathy to know what needs to be done. The room fell silent again. Hale studied her, then nodded. You've got your team. Get it done. The infiltration team was small, just Elena, Jax, and a handful of elite Marines. They boarded a stealth shuttle, its hull coated in signal-dampening material, and slipped out of the Resolute's hangar under the cover of an electromagnetic storm. The journey to the Virus system was tense, the shuttle weaving through Zinthari patrols and sensor arrays. Every moment they expected to be detected, but the storm held and they landed undetected on the relay station's surface. The station was a towering structure of crystal and metal, its surface humming with telepathic energy. The air inside was thick with a low, resonant hum that pressed against their skulls, a constant reminder of the hive mind's presence. Elena's team moved quickly, their footsteps silent, their communication limited to hand signals and glances. They'd drilled for this, but drills couldn't prepare them for the oppressive weight of the Zinthari's telepathic field. Jax, carrying the virus-loaded datapad, whispered, "This place feels like it's alive, like it's watching us." "It is," Elena replied, her voice barely audible, "but it's not looking for us. Not yet." They reached the central control chamber without incident, a testament to the Zinthari's overconfidence. The chamber was a vast circular room, its walls lined with crystalline conduits that pulsed with blue light. At its center was the main relay, a glowing, multifaceted core that thrummed with the thoughts of an entire fleet. Jax connected the datapad to the relay, his fingers flying over the interface. "Uploading now. Keep your eyes peeled." Elena nodded, scanning the chamber. The Marines spread out, their weapons ready, but the silence was unnerving. She could feel the hive mind's presence, a faint pressure at the edges of her thoughts, probing, searching. It was only a matter of time before it noticed them. "Almost there," Jax muttered. "Just a few more seconds." The pressure in Elena's mind intensified, and she realized they'd run out of time. "They know we're here. Jax, hurry." "Done," he said, yanking the datapad free. "Let's go." The team sprinted back toward the shuttle, but the station was waking up. The walls shimmered as telepathic alarms blared, a high-pitched whine that echoed in their skulls. Xanthari drones poured into the corridors, their movements eerily synchronized, their eyes glowing with the hive mind's fury. Elena's team fought their way through, their training and trust carrying them where telepathy couldn't. They moved as a single unit, covering each other's backs, anticipating each other's moves. A Marine fell, then another, but they didn't stop. They couldn't. When they reached the shuttle, Jax was bleeding heavily, his arm hanging limp. Elena dragged him aboard as the engines roared to life. The shuttle lifted off, dodging blasts from the station's defenses, and disappeared into the storm. Back aboard the Resolute, Elena watched the long-range scanners as the virus took effect. The Xanthari fleet en route to New Horizon began to falter. Ships veered off course, their formations dissolving into chaos. Telepathic signals spiked, overloaded with random conflicting thoughts. Fear, anger, confusion. The hive mind was drowning in its own noise. Athena's voice broke the silence on the bridge. "Xanthari fleet is in disarray, they're retreating." The crew erupted into cheers, but Elena didn't join them. She stared at the display, her jaw tight. "It's not over," she said quietly. "We've hurt them, but they'll adapt. They always do." Jax, slumped in a chair with a medkit strapped to his arm, grinned through the pain. "Let 'em adapt. We'll just keep hitting them where it hurts." Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Xanthari had underestimated humanity's silence once again. But the war was far from won, and the cost of each victory was rising. The medbay of the UNS Resolute was a grim mosaic of humanity's resilience. Wounded soldiers, overworked medics, and the sharp tang of antiseptic mingling with the metallic scent of blood. Elena sat on a bench outside the critical care unit, her hands stained with Jax's blood, her eyes fixed on the floor. He'd made it through surgery, barely, but the prognosis wasn't good. The Xanthari drone that had caught him with its blade had nearly severed his arm. He'd lost too much blood too fast. Admiral Hale approached, his footsteps heavy in the quiet corridor. He didn't sit, just stood beside her, his voice low. "You did what you had to do, Reyes. The mission was a success." Elena didn't look up. "Doesn't feel like it." Hale exhaled sharply through his nose, a sound that was almost a sigh. "We've got a chance now because of you. The Xanthari are reeling. New Horizons safe for another day." "At what cost?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We lost good people down there. Jax might not make it. And for what? A temporary advantage?" Hale's tone hardened. "This isn't a temporary advantage. It's a turning point. The Xanthari know we can hurt them now. They'll hesitate, and that hesitation is all we need." Elena finally met his gaze, her eyes burning with a mix of anger and exhaustion. "Hesitation won't win this war. We're running out of ships, out of people. We can't keep trading lives for time." Hale didn't respond immediately. He looked down at her, his face unreadable, then said, "Get some rest, Reyes. That's an order." She didn't move as he walked away. Rest wasn't an option. Not while the Xanthari were still out there, regrouping, adapting. Not while Jax was fighting for his life because of her plan. The silent fleet gathered in the shadow of New Horizons' moon, its ships battered but unbroken. The victory at the relay station had bought them breathing room, but the cost had been steep. Morale was fraying, the weight of constant losses pressing down on every crew member. They were fighting an enemy that could read their thoughts, predict their strategies, and overwhelm them with sheer numbers. Humanity's silent coordination had given them an edge, but it demanded everything: trust, sacrifice, and a willingness to face the abyss together. In the Resolute's war room, the senior officers debated their next move. The air was thick with tension, every voice edged with desperation. Captain Lin, commander of the destroyer UNS Valiant, was the loudest. "We can't keep doing this. Every time we engage, we lose more than we gain. We need to fall back, regroup, and defend Earth directly." "And let them take the colonies?" Another officer shot back. "If we abandon New Horizon, we're abandoning millions." "We don't have the numbers to hold it," Lin snapped. "We're fighting a war of attrition and we're losing." Elena, standing at the edge of the room, spoke up for the first time. "We're not losing. We're learning." All eyes turned to her. Lin's lip curled. "Learning? Is that what you call it? We've lost half our fleet. Your last learning experience cost us 12 ships and nearly got Morales killed." Elena's voice was calm, but her words cut like steel. "And it cost the Zinthari their relay station and half their fleet. They're not invincible. We've proven that. They adapt, but so do we. That's our strength." Lin started to respond, but Hale raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough. Pat Reyes is right. We've bloodied them, and they're not used to being on the defensive. But Lin's not wrong either. We can't keep fighting like this. We need a new approach." Elena stepped forward, her mind racing. "Then we take the fight to them. Not their fleets, not their stations, their hive mind itself. We've disrupted it before. What if we can sever it completely?" The room went still. Hale's eyes narrowed. "Sever it? You're talking about a decapitation strike on their central hive. Do you have any idea what that would take?" "Yes," Elena said, "and I think we can do it, but it'll require everything we've got." Lin shook his head. "You're insane. Even if we could get close enough, their telepaths would sense us coming long before we got there." "Not if we don't know the plan ourselves," Elena said. "We've been relying on silence, but we can take it further. Athena can generate a randomized attack pattern, something even we won't know until the moment we strike. No thoughts, no intentions, just action." Hale frowned. "You're suggesting we go in blind?" "No," Elena said. "I'm suggesting we trust each other. Trust Athena. Trust ourselves to adapt in the moment. The Zinthari can't read what we don't know." The silence that followed was heavy, the weight of the decision pressing down on everyone in the room. Finally, Hale nodded. "Prepare the fleet. We'll take the fight to them." Hours later, Elena sat by Jax's bedside in the medbay. He was awake, barely, his voice a hoarse whisper. "Heard about your plan. Sounds crazy." She smirked. "Crazy's what we do." He coughed, wincing in pain. "You're gonna need someone to keep the engines running when it all goes to hell. Don't count me out." "You're not coming," she said firmly. "You're staying here." "Like hell I am," he said, his voice stronger now. "This is bigger than me, Reyes, bigger than any of us. We're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting to prove something. That silence isn't weakness, that we don't need their hive mind to be strong." Elena looked at him, her throat tight. "You've already proven that." "Not enough," he said. "Not yet." She didn't argue. She couldn't, because deep down she knew he was right. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about showing the galaxy what humanity could do, what they were made of. And if they failed, there wouldn't be another chance. As she left the medbay, Athena's voice echoed in her earpiece. "Fleet is ready. Operation begins in 1 hour." The silent fleet drifted in the void, a scattered constellation of battered ships on the edge of the Zinthari home system. The enemy's central hive loomed in the distance, a massive, crystalline citadel orbiting a dying star, its surface alive with pulsating light. This was the heart of the Zinthari Empire, the nexus of their hive mind. If it fell, the war would end. If it didn't, humanity would. Elena stood on the bridge of the UNS Resolute, her eyes fixed on the holographic display. The fleet was operating under complete radio silence, their positions marked only by faint encrypted pings. Athena had done her work. The attack plan was a chaotic, ever-shifting algorithm, its details hidden even from the fleet's own commanders. No one knew the full scope of the operation. Not Hale, not Elena, not even the AI herself. It was a gamble born of desperation, a strategy designed to outwit an enemy that thrived on predictability. The Zinthari were waiting. Their fleet was massive, hundreds of ships arrayed in perfect formation around the citadel, their telepathic link a shimmering web of thought. They'd learned from their losses. They were ready for humanity's tricks, or so they believed. "Final approach," Athena's voice said, calm and unyielding. "Engage on my mark." Elena's heart pounded, but her voice was steady as she relayed the order to the crew. "All hands, prepare for combat. Trust your training. Trust each other." The fleet surged forward, their ships breaking formation in a seemingly random scatter. The Zinthari responded instantly, their telepaths sensing the humans' approach despite the silence. But what they sensed was chaos. Disjointed movements, no clear strategy, no unified intent. It was like trying to read a storm. The battle began in a frenzy. Zinthari ships moved with eerie precision, their telepathic coordination allowing them to outmaneuver the human vessels at every turn. But the humans didn't fight like a fleet. They fought like a swarm, unpredictable, adaptive, each ship acting on its own, but somehow in harmony. Athena's algorithm fed them fragments of the plan in real time, a constantly shifting puzzle that even the Zinthari's hive mind couldn't piece together. Elena gripped the edge of her console as the Resolute shuddered under heavy fire. "Athena, status?" "Zinthari fleet is adapting," the AI replied, "but their response times are slowing. The lack of a coherent human strategy is disrupting their predictive models." "Good," Elena said. "Keep them guessing." The Resolute dove through the chaos, its cannons blazing. Jax, back on his feet despite the medic's protests, was in the engine room, barking orders to keep the ship's systems online. "Reroute power to the forward shields," he shouted over the din. "We're not dying today." The battle raged on, the void lit by the fire of exploding ships and the streaks of energy weapons. The silent fleet was outnumbered, outgunned, but they fought with a ferocity that defied logic. A destroyer rammed a Zinthari cruiser, detonating both in a blaze of light. A frigate sacrificed itself to shield the Resolute, its crew's final act of trust echoing through the silence. And then the opening came. A gap appeared in the Zinthari formation, a fleeting moment of disarray as their telepathic link faltered under the strain of the chaotic assault. Athena's voice cut through the noise. "Window detected. Resolute, you have a clear path to the Citadel." Hale didn't hesitate. "All ships, cover the flagship. This is it." The Resolute surged forward, its engines roaring as it broke through the Zinthari line. The Citadel loomed ahead, its crystalline surface bristling with defenses. Elena's mind raced, but she pushed the fear aside. There was no room for doubt. Not now. "Target the Citadel's core," she ordered. "Athena, prepare the virus." The AI's response was immediate. "Virus ready, uploading on your command." The Resolute closed the distance, its hull scorched and scarred from the battle. Zinthari ships swarmed them, their telepathic link tightening as they focused their collective will on the human flagship. The pressure in Elena's mind was unbearable, a crushing weight of alien thoughts pressing down on her. She gritted her teeth, blood trickling from her nose, and held her ground. "Fire," she said. The Resolute's main cannon unleashed a beam of energy that struck the Citadel's core, cracking its crystalline shell. At the same moment, Athena uploaded the virus, a digital weapon designed to do more than disrupt. It was a thought killer, a cascade of chaotic signals that would sever the hive mind's connections, leaving the Zinthari fleet adrift. The effect was immediate. The Citadel's light flickered, then died. The Zinthari ships froze, their perfect coordination shattered. Telepathic screams echoed through the void as the hive mind collapsed, billions of voices suddenly silenced. But the victory came at a price. The Resolute was caught in the Citadel's death throes, a wave of energy ripping through the ship. Systems overloaded, sparks flying across the bridge as the crew fought to stabilize the vessel. "Engines are critical," Jax's voice crackled over the comms. "We've got maybe 30 seconds before the core goes." Elena turned to Hale, her voice urgent. "We have to abandon ship." He nodded, his face grim. "All hands. Evacuate. Get to the escape pods." The crew moved with practiced efficiency, their trust in each other unwavering even in the face of death. Elena stayed on the bridge, ensuring the last of the crew made it out. Jax's voice came through again, strained but defiant. "Reyes, get out of there. I'm staying to keep the engines stable." "No," she snapped. "You're coming with us." Too late for that, he said. Go, finish this. She hesitated for a split second, then ran. The escape pod launched just as the Resolute's core detonated, a brilliant flash of light marking the end of the flagship, and Jax's sacrifice. As the pod hurtled toward the safety of the remaining human ships, Elena watched the Zinthari fleet collapse into disarray. Without the hive mind, they were nothing, just scattered ships, lost and leaderless. The battle was over. Humanity had won, but the cost was etched into every survivor's face. The silent fleet had been decimated, its flagship destroyed, its heroes fallen. Elena stared out the pod's window, her fists clenched. They'd done the impossible, but the price of silence had never felt heavier. The war was over, but the silence lingered. In the halls of the Galactic Federation, where telepathic diplomats once buzzed with the thoughts of 1,000 species, there was a new stillness. Humanity had arrived, not as conquerors, but as survivors, their presence a testament to the power of the unspoken. Elena Reyes stood in the Federation's grand chamber, her dress uniform stiff and unfamiliar after years in combat gear. The room was a vast, domed expanse, its walls shimmering with holographic star maps. Alien delegates filled the tiers, their telepathic whispers a faint hum in the air. They watched her with a mix of curiosity and unease, their thoughts carefully guarded. Humanity's victory had shifted the balance of power, and the galaxy didn't know what to make of these silent, stubborn creatures. Ambassador Kelthar, the Zinthari diplomat who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, stood at the central podium. His crystalline skin shimmered faintly, his posture rigid with the weight of defeat. The Zinthari Empire was in ruins, its hive mind shattered, its fleets scattered. What remained was a fractured people, struggling to rebuild without the unity they had once taken for granted. Kelthar's voice, amplified by the chamber's acoustics, carried a note of reluctant respect. The Zinthari Empire acknowledges its defeat. We sought to dominate through unity, to impose order on a galaxy we believed chaotic and weak. We were wrong. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Elena. Humanity has shown us the strength of silence, the power of trust, of individual will bound not by thought but by action. We underestimated you. We will not make that mistake again. Elena met his gaze, her expression unreadable. She didn't need telepathy to understand the weight of his words. The Zinthari had been humbled, but they weren't broken. They would adapt, as they always did. The difference now was that they feared humanity, not for their weapons or their fleets, but for their quiet, unbreakable resolve. Kelthar stepped down, and Elena took his place at the podium. The room fell silent, the telepathic hum fading as the delegates focused on her. She didn't speak immediately, letting the moment stretch, her presence a reminder of what humanity had endured. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady, unadorned. We didn't fight this war for power or conquest. We fought it to survive, to prove that we belong here, among the stars. You called us weak because we don't share your telepathy, your hive minds, but our silence isn't emptiness. It's strength. It's the space where trust grows, where creativity thrives, where individuals become something greater without losing themselves. She paused, her eyes scanning the chamber. We don't need to hear your thoughts to understand you. We don't need a hive mind to stand together. Humanity's strength isn't in what we say, but in what we do. And we will keep building, keep fighting for our place in this galaxy. Not because we want to dominate, but because we refuse to be dominated. The chamber was still, the delegates absorbing her words. For the first time, humanity wasn't just a footnote in the galaxy's history. They were a force, a quiet revolution that had upended centuries of telepathic dominance. Back on Earth, Elena stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean, the wind tugging at her hair. The planet felt smaller now, after everything she'd seen, but it was home. The scars of the war were everywhere, cities rebuilding, families mourning, fleets being repaired. Humanity had paid a steep price for its victory, but they had emerged stronger, their place among the stars secured. Admiral Hale joined her, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't speak for a long moment, just stood beside her, watching the waves crash against the rocks. Finally, he said, You did good, Rays. The galaxy's watching us now. They know what we're capable of. They're not the only ones, she said. We know what we're capable of, too. Hale nodded, a faint smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. That's what scares them? Elena didn't respond. She didn't need to. The war had taught her something the Zinthari never understood. Silence wasn't just the absence of noise. It was the space where humanity thrived, where trust and will forged bonds stronger than any hive mind. The galaxy had learned that lesson the hard way. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Elena turned and walked away, the weight of the war finally lifting from her shoulders. Humanity's revolution wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet, steady, relentless, and it was just beginning.